I'm Gina Bell, and I'm a storyteller. This is Jars of Arioch, Chapter 5, Saint Dugast. The older cop and Benoit were waiting for me when I got to the police station.
"How are you holding up, Tracy?"
the older cop asked. I'm okay. I don't think it's really had a chance to sink in yet. Raven, Officer Hunter's sister, gave me hope here, and she's really helped.
Well, we pulled the surveillance video from a few of the shops downtown and had our people go through 'em,
Benoit answered back.
Let's go back inside. I want to show you what they picked up while you were watching him walk back up the parkway.
We all went back inside and sat down at the little table in front of the TV.
This one, Benoit continued, is from a market in the middle of town, the market you stood under the awning of.
In the video, you could see the very top of my head, and occasionally you could see Hope as she lunged forward. People were walking quickly to find shelter. There was no man with a hat, but you could still see the reflections he made. If you didn't know what to look for, you might never notice that the little girl walking reflected nothing.
According to our specialist, none of the videos have been edited, not Tracy's or anyone else. We also translated the symbols. This one on his fingers seems to be the Enochian alphabet, but in no particular order. The symbols left in the house on Acorn Branch are here.
Benoit showed us several pictures of the bloody rooms in the old dead man's home. Below the pictures were translations. The rooms were covered in the wise monkey sayings. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil was written everywhere.
Now the see no evil was written first. The blood there's the oldest. Hear no evil comes next, and then speak no evil. The symbols in Kai and Jake's room get much more complex. The symbols there translate to the saying, the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in a period of moral crisis, maintain their neutrality. It's from Dante's Inferno. The tattoos matched also. Travis's tattoo says, hear no evil, in Enochian. The chief has the entire saying from Dante on him, and the old man with the missing eyes got the see no evil. Also, it seems that the glove was made from human skin.
The older cop shook his head slowly back and forth and leaned back in his chair.
This is why I left the South,
the older cop said under his breath. Benoit continued.
Now the men out there, detective, want to handle this their way, with guns and batons. Now based on this video evidence, we must open our minds to different possibilities.
What possibilities? The younger cop asked. He seemed frustrated.
You planning on taking that gree-gree bag I'm smelling from here instead?
The older cop asked Benoit.
I have no idea what to do, Benoit responded. I know those men love their dogs tremendously. I know they would have done anything to keep 'em safe, and none of them could. We know this guy can come and go without being detected. Seems to me he's only seen when he wants to be seen. Now, I am open to suggestions, gentlemen. Tracy's seen him several times. Maybe she can help in some way.
They all turned to me. I didn't know what to say. Well, this whole thing's been very new to me. Before leaving California, I didn't know what Gree or Enoch, whatever it is, was. Raven Wolf and her sister Crow seem to have some knowledge of him. I have no idea what, if anything, he wants from me. Maybe you guys should talk to them.
Well, I talked to Raven, responded Benoit. She has no idea what he is either. I did call Crow Wolf and ask her if she wouldn't mind coming down, but apparently she doesn't leave her house very often.
I know where she lives. We can go out there and talk to her. The cops all looked at each other.
Well, an open mind is always important, older cop said to young. I think we should go talk to her. These boys out there are planning their attack their way. Let's leave them to it for now and see if we can find a backup plan just in case all this high-powered artillery doesn't work.
I mean no disrespect to any of you, Officer Young interrupted. I think we're going to crazy places with this. Now, I've never heard the word entity used in a homicide. We're going to be laughed out of the station. What exactly are we saying by entertaining the idea that this isn't just some sort of a vigilante, a walking, talking man, or maybe a magician of some kind, but an entity? Come on!
We are just gonna listen, son. Keep an open mind and listen.
The funeral for Chief Reagan had been planned for July 6th. All the police dogs would get funerals also. There were police cars everywhere in Gatlinburg, and the words satanic serial killer were now being used by the media. We sailed through a roadblock set up on Highway 321 on our way to the Crow's Nest. Benoit flashed her badge out the window, and we drove by all the cars waiting at the checkpoint. All the gun stores were out of guns and ammunition. It's very different being in a state that has such lax gun laws. You didn't even need a permit to carry a concealed weapon here. The city of Gatlinburg was locked and loaded. There were those more vulnerable that weren't allowed to carry a weapon, like sex offenders, for example. As we drove up the gravel driveway, Hope got more and more excited. Apparently, she knew where we were going. We pulled up to the double wide. There was no sign of life from the outside. No dogs, chickens, or black cats. I did see people looking through the curtains to see who was coming. They opened one of the curtains completely, and a man stood there with a rifle. He had a stained white t-shirt and overalls. He very obviously chambered the rifle. The Crow walked up behind him and slapped him in the back of the head. We could tell she was yelling something. I could see the smoke from her cigarette filling the air around the man with the rifle. He lowered his weapon and waved at me. Crow opened the door.
"Get the hell in here!"
she yelled while holding the screen door open for us. Let the show begin, I imagined Kai would say if she were here. We all got out of the car and Hope ran to the trailer. I could hear the other dogs yelping for joy as she walked in. Even the fucking dogs know each other in this town. Benoit went in first and purposefully stepped over a line of red and white dust that had been sprinkled in the doorway. "Mind the brick dust and salt, everyone," Benoit said softly to all of us.
"I know my Louisiana hospitality rules, my dear,"
the older cop responded. Young very intentionally stepped over the powder in the doorway and rolled his eyes. We walked in, and there wasn't a seat to be had. Every seat and most of the floor was filled with men with guns in their hands and dogs. The door to Nanny's room was closed.
"We got all the women and babies in the back there with Nanny,"
Crow said. We all piled into her little room in the back, the same room where she had read my tarot cards originally. Crow lit a candle and another cigarette and sat down in her chair with the tarot cards in front of her.
"Come in, my Louisiana princess."
Crow beckoned for Benoit to sit down in the chair across from her.
"You gentlemen do know you are working with royalty here, right, don't you?"
The Crow looked at the men in the room.
"Oh, I see. You keep that to yourself, do you? You say this is folklore, but I can smell the gree-gree bag in your pocket. You tell people you do it for your mama, but I know better. If I was you, I'd reach down into that old bag of tricks you were born with, baby."
And which tricks would you recommend, ma'am? Benoit asked.
You see my dogs out there? There's some good dogs, but they ain't blue, and they sure as hell ain't Hope. Their ancestors have been keeping that thing away since I was little. The universe always has a balance. I'm gonna go get Nanny. No one knows him like her. She's faced him down one night, looked him right in the eye. He even touched my sister, Raven. Walked right up to my mom and touched her brand new baby girl on the head. Follow me. We gotta walk into her room. Her wheelchair's too wide for her to get out.
When she opened the door, one of the women on the other side had to slide over to make room for us so we could open the door. The room was filled with women and children. Several were breastfeeding babies with only diapers on. This place was hot like an oven. Nanny sat right in the middle of all of them. A few got up so they could point Nanny's chair toward the cops. She looked at Benoit and smiled a toothless grin. She had on shorts, and the stumps she had for legs pointed at us.
This one.
She pointed a crooked finger at Benoit.
And this one. Plus that one.
She pointed to me and then Hope.
We might just be able to calm it down.
We are hoping for more than that. We are hoping to catch him, said Benoit.
Nanny let out a loud laugh, and some of the chewing tobacco fell out of her mouth. She wiped it with her sleeve.
You, of all people, should know better than that, baby. You can't catch him any more than you can catch the goddamn Holy Ghost. You and your man got him all riled up now. He was content there for a long time, just taking the ones that no one will miss. A thing like that, it loves all the grief and pain it's causing. You come at him with force, and it's force you'll get. You'll get it in folds. He feeds off the rage and the violence. You can't bait him. You can't catch him. This thing is as old as the earth itself.
So what exactly are you proposing we do then?
Benoit asked.
I don't think there's anything much you can do now. I've been listening to the news out there. The rage that has filled those people is pumping him up. You and I both know there ain't no way in hell those men that picked up their dogs and carried their chief out in a body bag, well, they ain't gonna back down. The more violence they throw at him, the stronger he gets. Now if you, Princess, and this one here.
She pointed to me, Benoit, and Hope.
Took both Hope and Blue in there alone, you might be able to calm him down, but you ain't never gonna catch him. They told me you was half a girl, girlie. You ain't half a girl no more. Now you have Hope. Now you're strong. You two girls and these two bitches just be might strong enough. But I can tell you, without a doubt, those idiots out there with all their guns, they're just pumping him up stronger than ever.
May I ask, have you ever calmed him down yourself? And if so, how did you do that?
The older cop asked.
There's only one way to calm down a demon, Cajun. You gotta let him have what he wants, and then he won't bother with the rest. Y'all started a war now. A war you can't win. Y'all are good at that, ain't you? That's what men like you do. They start wars they can't finish.
Nanny spit a dark liquid into her cup and wiped her mouth with an already brown-stained sleeve. She fished a jar of chewing tobacco out of her bra, and one of the women got up to help her. The young woman took a hunk and stuck it into the side of Nanny's cheek and wiped her hand on her pants. "What does he want?" I asked. Sounds to me like this is what he wants, Benoit answered softly. He wants us all scared and angry.
See? You know, Princess. He's just in you, like Hope and Blue and little girlie here. You're either born with it or you ain't. Y'all were born with it. These men out there only know one way to handle things, and that's what he wants.
So why are all the men in your living room armed? Detective Young asked Nanny.
It makes him feel better, like a baby with a pacifier. He won't come in here. He might sneak around outside, but he won't come in. When all my cats come back, I'll know we can get started going outside again. For now, this little shitty home is the safest place in town. We got all we need right here. Y'all are welcome to stay. Next time y'all come in here, bring some milk and bread for little ones. Maybe some peanut butter and jam.
The older cop bent down and whispered something to Nanny. Whatever he said made her laugh, and as she did, a big hunk of tobacco flew out of her mouth again.
Well, thank you so much for your help, ma'am, older cop said. We appreciate you very much. Let's get out of these nice people's home. I'm driving.
We all got back into the car and drove to the grocery store. The older cop parked and asked Benoit to go in with him. The rest of us waited in the car with the AC on. Young continued to ask me questions and write things down. About 45 minutes later, they came out with 2 shopping carts full of food, diapers, bottled water, juice, and some baby bottles, shampoo, soap, paper towels, paper plates, and other household essentials. It must have cost him a fortune. 3 people at the grocery store came out with more carts of food. He filled the trunk and then began piling stuff on top of us. Hey, boss, I'm curious what you said that made that old lady laugh so hard, Detective Young asked his mentor.
I told her that if she didn't need to stay and take care of her family, I would ask her to go dancing with me.
Young chuckled a bit. I don't understand how any of this is helping us find the man or men responsible for all this death and destruction.
I was raised around all this shit, Benoit responded. I went to college, and I went through FBI training. I know how crazy all this seems. But if you want us to drop you off at the station, I would be more than happy to do that for you. If not, shut the fuck up.
After that, Young did shut the fuck up. He didn't say another thing about the crazy places the investigation seemed to be going in. We drove back to the Crow's place, and the older cop asked Young for his help bringing in the groceries. Benoit and I started to get out, and he stopped us.
No disrespect, ladies, but where I come from, the men bring in the groceries on a hot day like this.
This left me and Benoit alone in the air conditioning. Did he say anything to you while you guys were in the store? I asked her.
He said a lot. First, he asked me to help with the things that a baby might need. I took my cot and I put in a few diapers and wet naps, some baby food. And when I found him, he was on the phone. He ordered them a new air conditioner and a freezer. Then he told me to go back and get more diapers and things. He spent almost $1,000 in there. He also spoke with the manager, and they're going to also deliver some meat and stuff for the new freezer in a couple of days, along with the dog and the cat food. I've never seen a cop do anything like that before. He's an incredibly good man. I asked him why he did it, and he said that he hadn't met anyone who needed it more than they did in an exceedingly long time. He also said it's an offering. In the face of such darkness, sometimes the best protection is to reveal your own light. Crow came as far as the front door and hugged him as we were leaving. They had a short conversation
and then we left.
Tracy, the older cop began, I must apologize to you.
For what?
My name is Arioch Dugast.
My old cop has a name, I thought to myself.
The crow back there, she let me know I had never actually introduced myself, and I apologize. I was raised better than that, I assure you. My mama must have been spinning in her grave.
The traffic on the main road was horrific because of all the roadblocks. Cops were literally everywhere, and the people were nervous. I could feel it. Nervous, scared, and angry. The manhunt had begun. The helicopters had become so common, folks stopped looking up at them. The streets were not as full as they should have been. We heard on the news that many had canceled their reservations for their hotels and cabins in Gatlinburg. Tourism is down now. The roadblocks did nothing but make people more agitated than they already were. Hope and I watched the fireworks from our room. We could hear loud pops coming from all over as the town tried to enjoy the 4th of July. Normally there would be parades and festivities. Gatlinburg is known for being the first ones to begin celebrating the 4th of July. This year COVID had killed off most of the fun, and the serial killer did the rest. Hope looked up at me and began her howling. I figured she was howling at all the fireworks, but then I heard the sounds of men in the woods, lots of men. A few minutes went by and we heard tons of loud pops. I couldn't tell if it was coming from a gun or just the celebrations going on downtown. Then I heard ambulances, and for the rest of the night they didn't stop. The sirens went on all night all over town, and Hope continued to growl along with them. It was an awfully long night for me. The following morning I got up and turned on the TV. Apparently there had been attacks all over Gatlinburg. This time things were quite different. This time most were still alive, but they were all missing parts of their bodies. The news didn't say, however, which parts were missing. The list of those maimed seemed to be a who's who of the sex offender registry. It was as if someone had a list and was targeting sex offenders. The cops were chasing him through the woods behind our apartments, and several cops had shot other cops trying to bring down what they saw as some guy wearing a hat. When interviewed, it was apparent from the memberless men that they had an array of descriptions of their assailant. Some saw a man, and others a child or a woman, but they all had one thing in common. They all had a hat. Gatlinburg was all over the news. I'm sure that made the city of Gatlinburg thrilled. They had always touted themselves as a family-friendly tourist destination, but now they were home to one of the largest manhunts in the state's history. The following day would be the funeral for Chief Reagan. Benoit had asked me to go with her to the funeral so I wouldn't be alone. Most of the police officers would be attending the funeral, and she felt it might make me more vulnerable. I had nothing to wear to a funeral. I was told that there was an outlet mall in one of the neighboring towns, so Kai and I took the dogs and headed to Pigeon Forge. When we got there, the outlet mall was packed. They had recently imposed a face mask law, and everyone was walking around with a mask hanging from their chin. Very few had their masks on the right way. This reminded me that I didn't have one. We stopped in their customer service office and we bought 2 masks with the small logo on them from the mall. I hated it. I felt like I was suffocating. The mall was an outdoor mall, and walking around was exceedingly difficult, especially for Kai with her crutches. The humidity was horrific. I left her and the dogs on a shaded bench and popped into one of the women's clothing stores. As I walked around looking for a black dress, I could hear people talking about the murders and maimings. There were 2 men leaning against a wall waiting for their wives to finish shopping. He said his uncle was in the hospital with a missing penis. He had apparently met him at the hospital. He said the uncle had been home alone when there was a knock at the door around midnight. I tried to make myself look uninterested as I looked through the racks of clothing and tried to listen.
Between you and me, my uncle, he's a real piece of work. He's an ex-Marine. He's gotten into lots of trouble messing with women. He's always been a fucking pervert. When we was little, my mom told us never to be alone with him. She called him a creeper. He used to ask my parents if he could take us fishing, and my mom always made up some excuse as to why we couldn't go. He lived alone in a little shack on my grandma's property for years. No AC in there either. I can't imagine when the last time was that he showered. When we got there last night, I swear you could smell him as we got off the goddamn elevator. Well, after everyone left and I was alone with him, he tells me what really happened. So there were 3 knocks at the door, and when he opened it, there was a beautiful woman standing in the doorway with a hat on. He said she's real tall. He said she had straight blonde hair that was so light it looked white. She had on a long leather coat and boots. She had a very tight t-shirt under it. He said he could see her nipples sticking out. He said she had big old titties. He said she never said nothing to him. She had on leather gloves and pushed him back with her index finger like this.
He took his finger and pushed the guy in the chest with it.
And my uncle said she didn't push him hard. She was real gentle at first. My uncle said her eyes burned through him. He said she had freaky eyes, dude. Like she had these crystal blue, piercing eyes. He said her hat was pulled down, and then she pushed her neck up in this weird position so she could look him right in the eyes. He backed up till he could feel his chair behind him, and then he sat down. He said she had this weird, musky smell, like this bitch gets down on her knees and opens his fucking pants. She starts to go to town on his Johnson, and he said the next thing he felt was super sharp teeth, like knives. He said he screamed like a woman. She stood up, and he could see blood all over her mouth as she chewed up his dick and then spit it all out on the floor. I mean, what the actual fuck, dude? She backs up while he's still screaming and bleeding all over the place and paints some shit on the wall with the blood from his dick. Jesus, what'd she paint? His buddy asked. I have no idea. I'll tell you when I find out.
I finally found a black dress and walked out. To the right of the shop I had been in was a home store. They had cookware and small kitchen appliances. They also had mason jars. I went ahead and bought a few. I thought I'd try and experiment with him. My phone rang just as I was walking out. It was the funeral home here in town that had cremated my brother. They said he was ready to be picked up. Kai helped me get to the funeral home, and I picked up a box filled with Travis. I could carry it with no problem. It felt like it weighed maybe 5 or 6 pounds. I put Travis into my trunk, and we went back to the motel. I tucked Kai into bed and gave her pain pills. I went back to my room, and I thought I'd do some research on Enochian with Travis. I sat his box on my table and tried not to be overwhelmed by grief. I had done a fairly good job of keeping it all bottled up inside until now. I found if I kept his memory hidden away and I didn't think about him, I might survive this without ending up like my mother. God knows all I wanted to do was get really fucked up so I wouldn't have to feel any pain. Hope needed me. Travis didn't need me anymore, but at least she did, and for that I was extremely grateful. I still hadn't called my mother, and I was dreading it. Travis's death would be one more excuse for our mother to get fucked up. Not that she needed one. I wonder what it would be like to have one of those mothers that you can call for any reason, at any time. Travis and I used to watch shows like The Brady Bunch when we were little. We would both sit and dream over the thought of a mother that would love us and want to keep us safe. Our mother had always been one of our worst enemies, at least up until now. I opened the box of mason jars and tore a piece of paper. On the paper I wrote, "My name is Tracy," in Enochian. The translation was difficult, since Enochian has different symbols than our alphabet. I did my best. If you said it aloud, it would sound like, "Old Duanai Tracy." I popped the note into the jar and put it in front of my door. As I opened the door, a young pretty woman was just about to knock. "Oh, hi, Tracy. My name is Megan McLeod, and I work for the local news station. I was wondering if I could talk to you about the man you've been seeing. You know, the one with a hat." "I'm not sure I'm supposed to do that."
"Well, says who?"
"Well, I don't know. I'm just not sure. I need to speak with the police that are handling the case first. If you want to leave me your card, I can call you if they say it's okay."
"Well, I only have a few simple questions. People are scared, Tracy. They want to know what's happening."
"I wish there were more I could tell you. I want to know what's happening, too." I closed the door in her face, and she knocked a couple more times and then gave up. After she left, I put the mason jar right in front of my door and went to bed with Hope. We had to get up early the next day for the chief's funeral. Hope woke up at 3:33 a.m. and began barking like crazy. I could hear Blue next door matching her. I saw a silhouette pass very quickly by my door. It was too fast for me to really make anything out, so I fell back to sleep. The alarm on my cell phone went off at 7:30 a.m. I put Hope's leash on her and took her out. As we walked out, I noticed the jar was gone.